Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, we'll be talking about the state of small businesses through the eyes of a very successful commercial banker. That's just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, you don't have to look at Wall Street or Washington to find out how the economy is doing. Just ask any commercial banker, because they're mostly the small business owners that are running this economy. To talk about that today, Chris Jones, he's the Executive Vice President of Texas Security Bank. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me here.
All right, well, let's talk about the economy. I remember, a year ago, we're all wondering if the world is coming to an end, and some of your clients had some of their best years last year.
Yeah, it was really an unprecedented. I've been in this in and around banking since 1985 here in Dallas, and I've probably been through, I don't know, 6 or 7 different recessions, and this was like no other I'd ever seen. The cause of it, the shutdown of the economy, which none of us have ever been through before. Nobody knew what that was going to bring. A lot of unknowns. And so, looking back to March of last year, we've got several hundred business owners, owner-managed companies that are operating businesses, and we're terribly worried about them. Every one of them. We don't know who's going to make it, who's not, and so we tried to figure out ways to help those companies. The federal government came through with the PPP program along with the SBA, and that was truly a lifesaver for many, many companies. That helped them to figure out, how they needed to right-size their business, different directions they needed to go in. And we were just amazed by the tenacity and the creativity of the clients that we work with, and really even beyond just the clients that we work with, just the entrepreneurship that we saw. And so entrepreneurship is about being creative, thinking differently, finding ways to make things happen. And so, with the help of PPP and some other programs that were out there, we saw a number of businesses, number one, either just plow through with their normal business or completely change directions, come out with new products that served the kind of COVID time that we were in. And so as we look back here a little over a year later, I'm relieved, number one, but I'm also just proud of the companies that we work with because of the tenacity and creativity that they all showed in operating their companies through this unprecedented time. And as we sit here today, every one of the companies that we work with and have been working with through this the COVID crisis, they've made it. That's amazing. And we haven't had one single client flame out during this period. And so, that's really something to be proud of. I don't know how representative our microcosm of the world is in terms of the business owners we serve. I hope it's representative of most businesses across our economy, but it's really just good to see how people have made it through this.
Well, you and I met actually about 3 weeks ago when I had you on my show, along with a bunch of other very smart people who got involved in the Redbird redevelopment. And we're going to put up on the screen, this is a massive project right there at the Redbird Mall area. Talk about what's happening.
Well, you just talk about creativity and seeing things that others don't see. I really credit Peter Brodsky and his team for what they saw in a mall that was, kind of on its last leg. It was a bit of a relic of the past, as many indoor malls have become. But they really saw potential in this and a way to redevelop it where they not only have restaurant and retail, but they bring a lot of office and employment to that site. And it's important, because what Peter would tell you is there is a huge community down there of people who live in the community. But as he describes, you want a community where you can live, work, and play. And in that particular area, you can live, but it's hard to work or play. And so people end up commuting a long way away from their home. They end up driving into Dallas for the fun part. And so his vision was, let's redevelop that so you can live, work, and play right here in this section of our city. I think it is truly a game changer for the city of Dallas and certainly for Southern Dallas as he comes through with his development of that project. We're playing a small role, and that one of the other complicating factors is he started with, I think, 5 or 6 or maybe even more different parcels that he had to accumulate across that mall property. So think about if you had a Dillard's, it was owned by Dillard's. If you had a Sears, it was owned by Sears. And then the core mall piece that tied it all together was also a separate ownership piece. That's the piece that we're working with them on the redevelopment for.
No, it's very exciting. I applaud you for your vision because I'm sure there's a lot of people in your field that because no one had ever done it before, why take the chance? So I applaud you for your vision. I think you will be richly rewarded in the history books. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It was a very unusual project, not a typical banking template in terms of financing.
Sure. Let's talk more about PPP, and we're going to show another article on the screen. Getting ahead of the PPP curve. You guys were featured in this article. Let's talk about PPP. I mean, that really was a lifesaver for so many companies, wasn't it?
It really was, and it was something that was brand new. We have never done that in our country before, in our economy. We've never shut down the economy completely in our country before either.
Right.
So I guess unprecedented actions take unprecedented measures to correct. So the PPP was meant to be a lifeline to business owners, and really it was meant to keep employees connected to their companies. Because if you think about a complete shutdown of the economy, if all of a sudden you're told you can't run your business, you can't open your business, what do? Well, the first thing you have to do is cut your expense because now you've got no revenue coming in, right? And I think there was some foresight to say we've got to head that off at the pass. So the PPP program were funds that got funded directly to companies as incentive to keep the employees on their payroll. Because we thought, if you think back at the beginning of this COVID crisis, we didn't really know how long it was going to be. We thought it was going to be 2 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that. And so it was meant to be a bridge to get through that period. And as we all know, it became a much longer period of time that people had to span through. But the PPP program was funded from the federal government through the SBA with the help of the banks. The banks were the connection point to companies. Companies applied through banks. Banks did a certain level of underwriting and then processed with the SBA to try to get the funds for the business owner. We managed the loans on our books of the bank. I'm speaking of banks in general. Managed the funding of the loan, the collection of the loan, and all that. And the incentive was if you use those funds for the designated purposes, primarily payroll and keeping your employees on your payroll, then those loans would be forgiven, effectively becoming a grant to the company. And I can't not tell you how many businesses that we worked with that it was truly a lifesaver for them. It's what kept them going. It's what kept their employees connected to them. And so now we're going through the forgiveness process, and then, by the way, they also came out with a second round this year, a second round PPP. And if you could show that your revenues were down by 25% or more from 19 to 20 in any given quarter, you could come back and do a second funding on that PPP. And we had, we probably had half the companies that we worked with that were able to qualify for that. So.
Wow. Yeah, just such a lifesaver, as you said. Let's talk about what makes your bank different. And you told me before the show began that education and being a partner with your customer is really a big differentiator.
Yeah. So Craig Sheaf, who's our CEO, wrote the business plan for our bank, and this was going back 14 years ago, so 2007. And showed it to me and shared it with a few others. And we got excited about it because the business plan was really focused on working with owner-managed companies. So you think about the universe of companies out there, and we both came out of middle market banking where you had a hired CEO, hired CFO, hired HR manager that were operating a company. But if you take the perspective of looking at a lot of the companies that we work with, the common denominator is the owner of the company is in there making things happen every single day. That owner might be the CEO, the CFO, and the HR director, right? And so it's a different universe of companies. It's a different operational style. It's much more entrepreneurial. But we also recognize that if you're wearing a lot of different hats and running a company, there are a lot of things you have to know. You can do service or your industry, but there's 1,000 things you got to know at any given point about running a company, and several of them can kill you at any given time. And so we recognized that business education, people were starved for it. And so we started out with what we call now our business speaker program. And those are monthly lunch and learn formats. And we bring in different subject matter experts. It could be on business development. It could be on how to manage your company if you get hit with a ransomware attack. Who do you call first? It could be on fraud prevention. How do you stop, a trusted individual in your company from stealing from the company? All these things that you hear about and read about that happen to companies all the time, but may not be top of mind if you're trying to get your product out the door and trying to make the next sale. So we bring those subjects in using subject matter experts, and we have prospects, but really any business person that wants to attend. And it's been tremendously well received. We used to do them all in person. We had a room that would hold about 50 people, and it was typically packed. During COVID, we went virtual and basically doubled our participation rate. Okay. And so we're going to probably keep that one online for now. But then out of that, we had a lot of clients coming to us that said, I'd really like to go deeper into some of these subjects. An hour and a half a month is good, but I really want to go deeper and learn more about some of these subjects. And so out of that, we created our TSB Academy, which, we loosely model it after an executive MBA program where you have 2 meetings per month, about 3 hours at a time. It's a pretty big time commitment, but lasts over the course of almost a year. But we start with, in that, the fundamentals of accounting. Accounting 101, 102. How do you use your financial statements to help you run a better business? What do the ratios that bankers like us look at, what does that tell a business owner? And how can they use those same ratios to tweak and improve their company? And then from there, we talk about how to fund a business. We go into marketing and business development. We go all the way up to succession planning and the legal aspects of running a business. Wow. And so we cover a lot of ground, but when a participant looks back over what they've covered, it's a lot of really, really useful information. And so we created it initially it was directed to the business owner themselves. But pretty soon we had a lot of business owners coming to us saying, I'm getting so much out of this. I really want my next level people to have the same information as me so that we're speaking the same language. And so we've opened it up to key employees.
Chris, I congratulate you, and I can talk to you all day. It's a brilliant way to enhance a relationship, make your customer more successful, and more successful. So thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to end by putting up your website. It's texassecuritybank.com. Chris Jones, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.